What do you have? You have a soup of hiding a bad lie. Yeah, well, again, it's not about throwing your friends under the bus. We have the government cover-up. That's the one that has to be protected.
McCann's corpse was transported in the McCann's Renault Scenic hire car some weeks after she died. I believe there has been a high-level cover-up about what really happened.
Nós começamos a pensar nos pais como suspeitos, porque aquilo é uma encenação de crime.
The Atlantic wind whispers secrets across the scrubland above Praia da Luz. Dawn breaks, painting the Portuguese coastline in hues of amber and gold. A solitary figure moves through the shadows, shoulders hunched against the morning chill. In her hands, a bouquet of white lilies. She stops at an unmarked spot. Nothing distinguishes this patch of earth from the surrounding terrain. No cross, no plaque, no indication that this place holds significance. Yet she kneels, places the flowers with practiced precision, and lingers for exactly 3 minutes before retreating. This isn't a random act of remembrance. According to controversial detective Bernt Stellander, this is Kate McCann, mother of Madeleine, the 3-year-old British girl who vanished without a trace in 2007. And this windswept hill, Stellander claims, is where Madeleine's remains lie hidden from the world. I've documented Kate returning to this exact location multiple times over the years, Stellander revealed in his explosive 2024 book. Always alone, always with flowers, always before sunrise. Could this be the missing piece in one of the most baffling disappearances of our time? Or is it merely another sensational claim in a case drowning in speculation? Before we dive deeper into this revelation that could shatter everything we thought we knew about the Madeleine McCann case, hit subscribe and tell me where you're watching from today. The truth about what happened that night in Portugal has remained elusive for nearly 2 decades, but the flowers may finally be leading us to answers. Praia da Luz, May 3rd, 2007. A sleepy resort town on Portugal's Algarve coast, where whitewashed villas cascade down to golden beaches. The Ocean Club Resort stands as a haven for families seeking sun and relaxation. Apartment 5A, a ground-floor 2-bedroom unit, sits just 50 yards from the tapas restaurant where Kate and Jerry McCann would dine that evening. The sliding glass patio doors face away from the restaurant toward a public street, a detail that would later become crucial. Inside apartment 5A, 3 children sleep, 2-year-old twins Sean and Amelie McCann in their travel cots, and their sister, 3-year-old Madeleine, in a single bed. Madeleine, bright, vivacious, with distinctive right eye where her pupil bleeds into the iris, creating a unique dark fleck. She wears pink and white Eeyore pajamas, clutching her beloved cuddle cat stuffed toy. 6:15 p.m. The McCanns return from a day at the resort's pool with their children. They bathe the kids and prepare them for bed. 7:00 p.m. Dinner is served to the children. Kate later recalls Madeleine being particularly tired that evening. 7:30 p.m. Bedtime for all 3 children. The twins are placed in travel cots in the same room as Madeleine. 8:30 p.m. With the children asleep, Kate and Jerry leave apartment 5A to join 7 friends, collectively known as the Tapas 7, at the resort's tapas restaurant. The group includes Russell O'Brien and Jane Tanner, Matthew and Rachel Oldfield, David and Fiona Payne, and Diane Webster. They've arranged this same dinner setup throughout their vacation, taking turns checking on their sleeping children. The restaurant sits approximately 180 feet from apartment 5A, about a 30-second walk across the resort's pool area. From their table, the McCanns cannot see their apartment's front door or windows, only the upper floor of the building. 9:05 p.m. Jerry McCann performs the first check on the children. He enters through the front door using his key, finds all 3 children sleeping soundly, and returns to the restaurant. On his way back, he chats briefly with a fellow vacationer, Jeremy Wilkins. 9:15 p.m. Jane Tanner, on her way to check her own children, claims to see a man carrying a child in pajamas walking away from the Ocean Club. This sighting, later dubbed the Tanner sighting, becomes the first reported potential glimpse of Madeleine's abductor. 9:30 p.m. Matthew Oldfield checks on the McCann children, but only listens at the door without entering the bedroom. 10 p.m. Kate McCann goes to check on her children. She notices the bedroom door is open wider than she left it. As she enters the room, the breeze from an open window causes the door to slam shut. In the dim light, she sees the twins still sleeping, but Madeleine's bed is empty. Kate searches the apartment frantically, looking under beds, inside closets, behind curtains. Cuddle Cat remains on the bed. The window in the children's bedroom is open, with the shutters raised, a configuration Kate insists they never left it in. 10:06 p.m. Kate rushes back to the restaurant, uttering the words that would launch one of the most high-profile missing persons cases in history. "They've taken her. They've taken Madeleine." Chaos erupts. Resort staff and guests form immediate search parties, combing the grounds, checking under cars, searching dumpsters. Jerry McCann later describes this period as the most traumatic, the most devastating experience of his life. 10:41 p.m. The first police officers arrive, 2 members of the Guarda Nacional Republicana, GNR, Portugal's military police. They take basic details but conduct no forensic examination of the scene. No crime scene tape is placed. No fingerprints are taken from the window or shutters. 11:02 p.m. More police arrive, but the initial response is hampered by language barriers. The McCanns, desperate for action, call the British consulate and their holiday companions, contact the international media. By midnight, the resort is swarming with searchers. Hotel staff, off-duty police, local residents, and tourists form a human chain, calling Madeleine's name into the darkness. Roadblocks aren't established until 10 a.m. the following day, 12 hours after Madeleine was discovered missing. Border alerts to Spain, just an hour's drive away, aren't issued until the morning. The night that began with a peaceful family dinner ends with floodlights, search dogs, and the beginning of a mystery that would captivate the world for years to come. Can you imagine the panic of discovering your child missing? What would your first instinct be? That moment of realization, when Kate McCann saw the empty bed, would be just the first chapter in a story filled with twists, accusations, and heartbreak. As dawn broke over Praia da Luz on May 4th, the search for Madeleine McCann intensified, but crucial evidence was already compromised. The apartment had been trampled by dozens of people, resort staff, police officers, and concerned tourists. Windows were opened and closed, doors handled without gloves, and potential evidence disturbed. This contamination would haunt investigators for years to come. 2 witness sightings emerged as pivotal to the investigation, each occurring at different times and locations, each painting a different picture of what might have happened to Madeleine. The first came from Jane Tanner, one of the Tapas 7. At approximately 9:15 p.m., while heading to check on her own children, Tanner claimed to see a man carrying a pajama-clad child away from the Ocean Club. She described him as 5'7" to 5'10", wearing beige trousers and a dark jacket. The child, she said, was wearing light-colored pajamas consistent with Madeleine's. For years, this Tanner sighting dominated the investigation and media coverage, but a second, less publicized sighting occurred around 9:50 p.m., approximately 40 minutes after Tanner's observation and just minutes before Kate discovered Madeleine missing. Martin Smith, an Irish tourist, along with his family members, spotted a man carrying a child through the streets of Praia da Luz, heading toward the beach. The Smiths described a man in his mid-30s with short brown hair, wearing light-colored pants and a dark top. The child appeared to be wearing light-colored pajamas and was not wearing shoes. These 2 sightings created an immediate timeline problem. If Tanner saw Madeleine being abducted at 9:15 p.m., how could Jerry McCann have found all 3 children sleeping soundly at 9:05 p.m.? And if the Smith family saw Madeleine at 9:50 p.m., why was she being carried in the opposite direction from the apartment toward the beach 45 minutes after Tanner's sighting? The investigation took a dramatic turn in late July 2007 when British police brought specialized detection dogs to Portugal. Martin Grime, a renowned dog handler, arrived with 2 highly trained animals. Eddie, a cadaver detection dog trained to alert to the scent of human decomposition, and Keela, a blood detection dog trained to identify human blood. The dog's behavior in apartment 5A shocked investigators. Eddie alerted behind the sofa in the living room, in the parents' bedroom, and in a flower bed in the backyard. Keeler indicated the presence of blood in several of the same locations. When the dogs were taken to the McCann's rental car, obtained 24 days after Madeleine's disappearance, Eddie alerted to the vehicle's trunk and a key fob. Keeler indicated blood on the key and in the trunk as well. Video footage of these searches, later leaked to the media, showed the dogs' dramatic alerts, behaviors their handler insisted were reliable indicators. Grime testified that Eddie had never given a false positive in more than 200 previous deployments. Samples from the apartment and car were sent to the Forensic Science Service, FSS, in Birmingham, England. Initial reports indicated a match to Madeleine's DNA profile in the trunk of the car. However, subsequent analysis revealed the results were inconclusive. The DNA was degraded and represented a partial match that could have come from any of the McCann family members. The FSS ultimately concluded that the DNA evidence was not definitive proof of Madeleine's presence in the car. Portuguese investigators, led by coordinator Gonçalo Amaral, began to focus on inconsistencies in the McCann's statements and those of their friends. The checking system the group described had gaps and contradictions. Some witnesses reported seeing the apartment's shutters forced open, others said they appeared normal. The window, which Kate claimed was open when she discovered Madeleine missing, showed no signs of forced entry. A theory emerged among Portuguese authorities. Perhaps Madeleine had died accidentally in the apartment, possibly from a fall or medication overdose, and her parents had concealed her body, later moving it using their rental car. This theory gained traction when it was revealed that Kate McCann, a general practitioner, had access to sedatives, though no evidence ever emerged that she had administered any to her children. On September 7, 2007, Kate and Jerry McCann were formally named arguidos, official suspects, in their daughter's disappearance. During an 11-hour interrogation, Kate was allegedly offered a plea deal, confessed to accidentally causing Madeleine's death and concealing her body, and she would serve only 2 years in prison. She refused to answer 48 questions during this interrogation on advice from her lawyer. The McCanns returned to England on September 9, 2007, maintaining their innocence and insisting their daughter had been abducted. They launched their own investigation through private detectives and a massive media campaign. The Portuguese investigation continued to focus on the parents until July 21, 2008, when the case was officially archived due to lack of evidence. The McCann's arguido status was lifted, with Portuguese authorities stating they had found no evidence of any crime committed by the couple. The investigation's early focus on the parents, rather than pursuing other leads, meant that potential witnesses weren't interviewed promptly, surveillance footage wasn't secured before being overwritten, and phone records weren't thoroughly examined until months later. Critical errors in a case where time was of the essence. This case has more twists than we've covered so far. If you're finding this analysis valuable, hit that like button to help others discover it. The investigation's next phase would take us into international territory, with new players and shocking revelations. By 2011, the Madeleine McCann case had gone cold. Portuguese authorities had archived their investigation, and despite the McCanns' tireless private search efforts, no significant leads had emerged. Then, following a personal appeal from Kate McCann to Prime Minister David Cameron, the British government launched Operation Grange, a Scotland Yard review of all evidence in the case. Initially budgeted at $2 million, Operation Grange would eventually become one of the most expensive missing person investigations in British history, costing taxpayers over $13 million, and counting. Detective Chief Inspector Andy Redwood led a team of 37 officers who began by examining the 30,000-page case file from Portuguese authorities, translating and digitizing every document. In stark contrast to the Portuguese investigation, Operation Grange publicly maintained the working hypothesis that Madeleine had been abducted by a stranger and could still be alive. This approach represented a complete reversal from the theories pursued by Portuguese investigators. One of Operation Grange's most significant actions came in 2013, when they announced a major breakthrough regarding Jane Tanner's sighting. After extensive investigation, they identified the man Tanner had seen, a British tourist carrying his own sleeping daughter home from the resort's night nursery. This revelation eliminated what had been considered the primary sighting of Madeleine's alleged abductor, shifting focus to the Smith family's later sighting at 9:50 p.m. While police on 2 continents investigated, the media machine churned relentlessly. The McCann case generated the most intense press coverage of any missing person in modern history. In the first year alone, the story received more UK newspaper coverage than the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami or the 2005 London bombings. British tabloids, desperate for new angles, published increasingly speculative stories. Headlines accused the McCanns of selling their daughter, drugging their children, or being involved in swinging parties at the resort. These stories, based on anonymous sources and conjecture, devastated the family already struggling with their daughter's disappearance. In March 2008, Express newspapers published unprecedented front-page apologies across 4 newspapers: the Daily Express, Sunday Express, Daily Star, and Daily Star Sunday, acknowledging they had published a large number of articles that suggested the McCanns were involved in Madeleine's disappearance. The publisher paid $550,000 in damages, which the McCanns donated to their search fund. Later that year, the Tapas 7 received $375,000 in damages from the same publisher for similarly defamatory stories. As the McCanns battled the British press, a new front opened in Portugal. Gonçalo Amaral, the original coordinator of the Portuguese investigation, who was removed from the case in October 2007, published a book titled The Truth of the Lie in July 2008. In it, he detailed his theory that Madeleine had died accidentally in apartment 5A and that her parents had concealed her body. The McCanns sued Amaral for libel in 2009, beginning a legal battle that would last over a decade. In 2015, a Lisbon court ruled in their favor, ordering Amaral to pay $500,000 in damages and banning sales of his book. However, Amaral appealed, and in 2016, Portugal's appeals court overturned the decision. Portugal's Supreme Court upheld that ruling in 2017, citing freedom of expression and noting that the McCanns had voluntarily placed themselves in the public eye. The final blow came in 2022, when the European Court of Human Rights ruled against the McCanns, stating that their right to a presumption of innocence had not been violated by Amaral's book. The court ordered the McCanns to pay Amaral's legal costs of $16,000. Throughout these legal battles, the psychological toll on the McCann family was immense. Kate McCann later revealed she contemplated suicide in the months after Madeleine's disappearance. In her 2011 book, Madeleine, she described being unable to sleep or function normally, plagued by images of her daughter being abused. The couple's marriage faced intense scrutiny and pressure. Jerry, a cardiologist, returned to work in November 2007, while Kate resigned from her medical practice to focus on the search for Madeleine and caring for their twins. Friends reported that the couple received death threats, were spat at in the street, and had to move house to escape media intrusion. Despite these pressures, the McCanns maintained a united front. They established the charity Leaving No Stone Unturned to fund their search efforts and advocate for missing children. They marked each anniversary of Madeleine's disappearance with renewed appeals for information, holding on to hope that their daughter might still be found alive. The twins, Sean and Amélie, grew up in the shadow of their sister's disappearance. Now teenagers, they've been shielded from the worst of the media coverage, but remain aware of their sister and the ongoing search for her. What's the weather like where you're watching? The Atlantic breeze in Praia da Luz plays a key role in what happens next. That same wind that Kate McCann felt blow through the apartment when she discovered Madeleine missing would later become central to understanding the timeline of events that night, and to the shocking German connection that would emerge more than a decade later. For 13 years, the Madeleine McCann case remained an unsolved mystery with no named suspects. Then, on June 3, 2020, a bombshell announcement shattered the status quo. German prosecutors publicly identified Christian Brückner, a 43-year-old German national with a lengthy criminal record, as their prime suspect in Madeleine's disappearance. Brückner was no stranger to Praia da Luz. Between 1995 and 2007, he lived periodically in the Algarve region, residing in a farmhouse just 2 miles from the Ocean Club resort. During this time, he supported himself through petty theft, drug dealing, and burglaries of holiday apartments. Phone records placed him in Praia da Luz on the night Madeleine vanished, and his cell phone was activated on a tower near the McCann's apartment at 8:30 p.m., just an hour before Madeleine was reported missing. Hans Christian Wolters, the German prosecutor leading the investigation, made an extraordinary claim. "We have concrete evidence that our suspect killed Madeleine." In subsequent interviews, Wolters elaborated that they had forensic evidence of Madeleine's death, but not enough to bring charges. This cryptic statement fueled speculation about what evidence German authorities possessed. Brückner's criminal history painted a disturbing picture. In 1994, as a teenager, he was convicted of child sexual abuse in Germany. After moving to Portugal, his criminal activities escalated. In 2005, he raped a 72-year-old American woman in her Praia da Luz apartment, a crime for which he wasn't convicted until 2019, when DNA evidence finally linked him to the attack. He received a 7-year sentence for this brutal assault. German investigators revealed that Brückner had confided in a friend about his involvement in Madeleine's case while watching a TV news report about the 10th anniversary of her disappearance in 2017. According to reports, he told this associate that she didn't scream during the abduction. This alleged confession, along with other undisclosed evidence, formed the basis of the German case. In May 2023, the investigation took a dramatic turn when Portuguese, German, and British police conducted a massive search operation at the Arade Dam, about 30 miles from Praia da Luz. This remote reservoir was reportedly a little paradise that Brückner frequently visited during his time in Portugal. For 3 days, officers combed the shoreline and used divers to search the waters. They collected soil samples and several items for forensic analysis. Despite the intensive search, authorities never publicly announced finding significant evidence at the dam. The operation concluded with more questions than answers, leaving observers to wonder what specific intelligence had led investigators to this location. In October 2023, while still imprisoned for the 2005 rape, Brückner faced trial in Germany for 5 unrelated sexual offences allegedly committed in Portugal between 2000 and 2017. These included the sexual abuse of children on a beach near Praia da Luz and the rape of an Irish tour representative. The trial was seen as a potential preview of how prosecutors might build a case against him for Madeleine's disappearance. However, in a stunning development, Brückner was acquitted of all 5 charges in October 2024 due to insufficient evidence. The court ruled that witness testimony was unreliable and that too much time had passed to secure definitive evidence. This acquittal dealt a significant blow to German prosecutors, who had hoped these convictions would strengthen their position in the McCann case. Despite this setback, Wolters maintained that the investigation into Brückner's connection to Madeleine's disappearance continues. Brückner remains in prison until at least September 2025 for the 2005 rape conviction, giving investigators more time to build their case. Legal experts have questioned the strength of the German evidence. If prosecutors truly had concrete evidence of Brückner's guilt, why haven't they filed charges in the 3 years since naming him as a suspect? German law requires a high probability of conviction before charges can be brought, suggesting the evidence, while compelling, may not meet the threshold for prosecution. Brückner himself has denied any involvement in Madeleine's disappearance through his attorneys. His legal team claims he was with a young German woman on the night in question, though this alibi has never been substantiated. The emergence of Brückner as a suspect represents the most significant development in the case since its inception. For the first time, authorities have a plausible suspect with connections to the area, a history of similar crimes, and allegedly incriminating statements. Yet, the case against him remains circumstantial, with no publicly disclosed physical evidence directly linking him to Madeleine. This is where things get really interesting. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. You won't want to miss what comes next. The German connection may be compelling, but it's Detective Stellander's explosive claims about Kate McCann that could turn this entire case on its head. In the constellation of investigators drawn to the McCann case, Bernt Stellander stands apart. Neither a police officer nor a private detective hired by the family, Stellander emerged in 2019 as a self-described independent criminal investigator with a background in surveillance technology. Born in Sweden but based in Germany, the 58-year-old former security consultant claims to have spent 5 years and over $300,000 of his own money investigating Madeleine's disappearance. Stellander first gained attention through a series of YouTube videos where he criticized both the Portuguese and British investigations. His distinctive approach, combining drone footage, thermal imaging, and what he terms behavioral pattern analysis, attracted a dedicated following among case enthusiasts, but it was his 2024 book, The Sudden Impulse: What Really Happened to Madeleine McCann, that catapulted him into the mainstream conversation. The book's most explosive claim centers on what Stellander calls the flower ritual. According to his account, he identified a remote location approximately 3.7 kilometers from Praia da Luz, an unremarkable patch of scrubland overlooking the Atlantic. This area, accessible only by a narrow dirt track, became the focus of his surveillance operation in 2021. I installed wildlife trail cameras disguised as rock formations at strategic points, Stellander writes. These motion-activated cameras are designed to capture nocturnal animal movements, but served my purpose perfectly, documenting human activity in an allegedly abandoned area. Between March 2021 and December 2023, Stellander claims his cameras captured Kate McCann visiting this location 7 times. Each visit allegedly followed the same pattern: arrival before sunrise, placement of fresh flowers at a specific spot, several minutes of what appears to be silent contemplation, and departure before other visitors could arrive at the nearby hiking trail. The book includes grainy black and white images purportedly showing a woman resembling Kate McCann kneeling at the site. In one sequence dated May 3, 2022, the 15th anniversary of Madeleine's disappearance, the figure is seen placing what appears to be a small toy beside the flowers. Stellander's theory is both simple and shocking. This isolated location is where Madeleine's remains were concealed, and Kate returns periodically out of maternal instinct and guilt. He suggests that after an accidental death in the apartment, possibly from a fall or medication reaction, the McCanns faced an impossible choice. Rather than risk their medical careers and custody of their twins, they allegedly concealed Madeleine's body temporarily before moving it to this remote location. The site was chosen with forensic awareness, Stellander writes. The soil composition accelerates decomposition. The location is sheltered from casual discovery, yet accessible enough for brief, undetected visits. To support his theory, Stellander points to soil samples he collected from the site, which he claims contain trace elements consistent with decomposition. However, these samples were analyzed at a private laboratory rather than through official forensic channels, raising questions about chain of custody and testing protocols. The flowers narrative gained traction partly because it aligns with documented facts about Kate McCann's behavior. Since Madeleine's disappearance, Kate has made regular pilgrimages to Praia da Luz, particularly around the anniversary of May 3rd. These visits are well documented. She attends services at the local Nossa Senhora da Luz church, walks the beach, and visits the apartment complex. In her 2011 memoir, Kate wrote, "I need to be in Praia da Luz at least once a year. It's where I feel closest to Madeleine." This acknowledged connection to the location lends superficial credibility to Stellander's claims, suggesting his alleged surveillance might have captured genuine visits by Kate to the area, if not to the specific site he identifies. However, critical examination of Stellander's evidence reveals significant weaknesses. The trail camera images, while suggestive, lack the clarity needed for positive identification. The figure's face is never clearly visible, and the physical build could match thousands of women of similar age and height to Kate McCann. The timing of these alleged visits also raises questions. Stellander claims they occurred during Kate's known trips to Portugal, But journalists who have covered these visits report that Kate was accompanied by family members or representatives from the Find Madeleine campaign during most of her time in Praia da Luz. For Stellander's timeline to be accurate, Kate would have needed to slip away unnoticed for several hours before dawn, a difficult feat given the media attention that still follows her in Portugal. Perhaps most damaging to Stellander's credibility is his reluctance to share his evidence with official investigators. When asked why he hasn't turned his findings over to Operation Grange or Portuguese authorities, Stellander claims institutional corruption and a coordinated cover-up at the highest levels of British and Portuguese government. This conspiracy theory approach has led mainstream investigators and journalists to dismiss his work as sensationalism designed to sell books rather than uncover truth. Clarence Mitchell, the longtime spokesman for the McCann family, issued a statement calling Stellander's claims cruel fabrications that compound the suffering of a family who have endured enough pain. The statement emphasized that Kate and Gerry McCann have cooperated fully with legitimate law enforcement in multiple countries and do not recognize anything in Mr. Stellander's fantastical account. Operation Grange officials declined to comment specifically on Stellander's claims, but reiterated their focus on the abduction theory with Christian Brückner as their prime suspect. Portuguese judicial police similarly dismissed Stellander's book as speculation without evidential basis. Despite these official rejections, Stellander's claims have resonated with a segment of the public that remains skeptical of the abduction narrative. His book became a bestseller in the UK, Germany, and Portugal, and his YouTube channel gained hundreds of thousands of new subscribers following its publication. The Flowers narrative touches on a powerful archetype, the grieving mother drawn back to the site of her loss. Whether based in fact or fiction, it speaks to the emotional core of the case, a mother's unresolved grief and the human need for ritual in processing trauma. For those who believe Stellander, the flowers represent an admission of guilt and knowledge. For others, they symbolize the exploitation of a family's tragedy for profit and attention. The truth likely lies somewhere in between. Perhaps Kate McCann does visit private locations in Portugal to feel closer to her daughter, but not for the reasons Stellander suggests. What time is it where you're watching? As we approach the final revelations, I want you to remember that time is a crucial element in understanding what really happened. Just as the timeline of May 3, 2007, contains critical discrepancies, the timing of Stellander's alleged flower visits requires careful scrutiny. In the McCann case, minutes matter, and 17 years later, we're still trying to account for every one of them. From the moment Madeleine disappeared, the McCann's behavior has been scrutinized by professionals and armchair detectives alike. Their composure in press conferences, their media campaign, their decision to leave their children alone while dining, every action has been dissected for hidden meaning. Dr. Paul Britton, a criminal psychologist who consulted on the case, noted that the McCann's behavior fell within the wide spectrum of normal grief responses. There is no correct way to behave when your child is missing, he stated. Some parents collapse, others function with almost mechanical precision. Neither reaction indicates guilt or innocence. The McCann's decision to launch an immediate media campaign struck some observers as unusual. Within days of Madeleine's disappearance, they had engaged public relations professionals and were conducting regular press briefings. This proactive approach contrasted with the typical shocked paralysis many parents experience. However, forensic psychologist Dr. Catherine Ramsland points out that Gerry McCann's medical training may explain this response. Physicians are trained to act decisively in crisis. Converting helplessness into action is a common coping mechanism for medical professionals. Kate's subsequent withdrawal from public view as Gerry became the family spokesperson aligns with divergent grief patterns often seen in couples facing trauma. The public's perception of the McCanns was heavily influenced by cultural expectations of how parents, particularly mothers, should behave when a child is missing. Kate was criticized for appearing too controlled, for wearing makeup during interviews, for washing Cuddle Cat, Madeleine's stuffed toy that was found on her bed. These criticisms reflect what victimology experts call the perfect victim fallacy. the expectation that victims must perform their suffering in ways that satisfy public expectations. Criminal profiler Pat Brown, who has been critical of the McCanns, argues that their behavior shows signs of distancing language and rehearsed responses consistent with deception. However, other experts counter that such language patterns are also consistent with people who have told their story repeatedly under intense scrutiny and legal advice. When examining possible scenarios in Madeleine's disappearance, three primary theories emerge, each with supporting and contradicting evidence. The abduction theory posits that an opportunistic predator noticed the McCanns' routine of leaving their children unattended and seized the moment to take Madeleine. Supporting this theory are the Smith family sighting, Brückner's presence in the area, and the apartment's vulnerable ground floor location. Contradicting it are the lack of forensic evidence of an intruder and the narrow time window in which an abduction could have occurred. The accidental death theory suggests Madeleine woke, climbed on furniture to look out the window, and fell, suffering a fatal injury. The parents, discovering this tragedy upon return, allegedly concealed her body to avoid negligence charges. Supporting this theory are the cadaver dog alerts and the McCanns' medical knowledge of death protocols. Contradicting it is the lack of blood evidence consistent with a fatal fall, and the logistical challenge of concealing a body in an unfamiliar area under intense scrutiny. The third theory, that Madeleine wandered out of the apartment and met with harm or was abducted from outside, has received less attention but addresses some evidential gaps. It explains the open window, the lack of forced entry, and potentially the later Smith sighting. However, it fails to account for the dog alerts inside the apartment. Each theory contains unresolved questions. If Madeleine was abducted, how did the perpetrator enter and exit without leaving forensic traces? If she died accidentally, how did the McCanns conceal her body with no vehicle access that night? If she wandered out, why were there no sightings of a 3-year-old alone on the street? The flowers that Stellander claims Kate places at a remote site represent the perfect metaphor for these unanswered questions. Flowers at a grave provide closure and acknowledgement. Flowers at a memorial represent ongoing grief and remembrance. Flowers at a secret location could symbolize guilt, atonement, or a private ritual of connection. Perhaps the most honest assessment comes from Jim Gamble, former head of the Child Exploitation and Online Protection Center, who worked closely on the case. We may never know exactly what happened to Madeleine McCann, but what we do know is that a little girl is still missing, and two parents still wake every morning to that reality. The passage of time has not diminished public fascination with this case. Each new development, whether Brückner's identification as a suspect or Stellander's controversial claims, reignites debate about what really happened on May 3, 2007. The case has become a mirror reflecting our societal fears about child safety, our fascination with true crime, and our need for narrative closure, even when facts remain elusive. As we approach the 20th anniversary of Madeleine's disappearance, the flowers, whether real or metaphorical, remind us that behind the theories, books, and documentaries lies the simple, devastating truth. A child vanished, and someone knows why. This case continues to evolve. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our follow-up as new evidence emerges. The search for Madeleine and for answers goes on. Dawn breaks once more over the scrubland above Praia da Luz. The flowers left days ago have withered, their petals scattered by the relentless Atlantic wind. Whether placed by Kate McCann, as Stellander claims, or by one of the many pilgrims drawn to this case, they speak to our human need for markers, physical reminders of what remains unresolved. 17 years have passed since a 3-year-old girl vanished from apartment 5A. In that time, millions of words have been written, countless theories proposed, and lives forever altered. The investigation has spanned continents, consumed fortunes, and generated more questions than answers. Perhaps the truth of what happened to Madeleine McCann lies not in sensational claims or conspiracy theories, but in the mundane reality of human error, a moment's negligence, an opportunistic crime, a cascade of investigative missteps that allowed crucial evidence to slip away in those first critical hours. Or perhaps, as Stellander suggests, The answer has been hiding in plain sight all along, marked only by flowers that appear and disappear with the changing seasons. What remains constant is the power of this case to captivate our collective imagination, to remind us of our vulnerability and our fierce protective instinct toward children. In a world of uncertainty, we cling to the hope of resolution, of justice, of answers. As you reflect on what you've heard today, consider this. What draws us to these unresolved mysteries? Is it the search for justice or something more primal, the need to believe that even in our darkest moments, the truth eventually finds its way into the light?